I teach students to lie for a living. Now, that generally gets some rather strange responses, but it's true. I teach film. I'm a filmmaker, and I teach the art of filmmaking. And filmmaking, at its core, is the art of emotional manipulation. Every camera angle, every lighting choice, every edit, every musical cue, every decision made within the frame of a screen in a film shapes the way an audience thinks and the way an audience feels. For example, a close-up can create intimacy. A low-angle shot can create power. Shadows can create fear. And music can make us cry about fictional characters who never even existed. My film students know this well because they like to watch me when we watch films together in class. I cry very easily at those perfect moments when the music triggers just at the right spot to elicit that emotional response. Now, as a film teacher, one of the first things I need to teach my students in order to help them better understand film is a concept we call mise en scène. It's a French term that was coined by two of the greatest French filmmakers who ever lived, François Truffaut and Jean-Luc Godard. Essentially, this word means that everything within the frame is important, and we should look at it all equally. For example, the setting, the lighting, the costume and makeup, the staging and blocking, where the actors are placed in the frame. All of these things combine to make the mise en scène in a film. In other words, every detail is deliberately designed and arranged in order to persuade the audience to feel something, to elicit an emotional response. And the longer I've taught film and filmmaking, the more I've realized something deeply unsettling. Human beings are astonishingly easy to persuade because a camera does not capture objective truth. They construct perspective. And we live in a world where we are constantly flooded with algorithms and AI that give us perspectives that aren't always what we are meant to see or hear or think. But this idea of manipulating perspective through imagery, cinema has been doing that for centuries. We now exist in an age dominated by algorithmic feeds, AI-generated media, infinite scrolling narratives, and information systems specifically designed not to just capture our attention, but to tell us what to feel. These techniques that were primarily once used by filmmakers now shape how we interpret reality itself. And I believe that may be one of the defining challenges of our modern age. When we talk about misinformation, emotional manipulation, or algorithmic persuasion, we often speak as if these are entirely new problems, but they aren't. Cinema figured this out over a century ago. Long before things like TikTok, or Douyin as it's called here in China, long before Instagram, or likewise Xiaohongshu, also known as Little Red Book, long before artificial intelligence LLMs like ChatGPT or Gemini, film discovered something fundamental about human psychology. Human beings do not respond most strongly to facts. Human beings respond most strongly to emotionally convincing narratives. The best example for that comes from our friends in Russia. In the early 1900s, Soviet filmmakers developed what became called Soviet montage theory. It is one of the essential film movements of the early film era. And it was pioneered by two Russian filmmakers, Lev Kuleshov and Sergei Eisenstein. They discovered that if you take two images and put them next to each other in a certain sequence, audiences will unconsciously create meaning between them. For example, if you take a neutral face and follow that image by a coffin, an audience will generally perceive grief. Or if you take that same neutral face and follow it by a picture of food, an audience will generally perceive hunger, or at least I do. The image itself never changed, but the context around that image did, and suddenly meaning appeared. Not because it objectively existed, but because the audience emotionally constructed it to. Governments quickly realized this as well. Propaganda films throughout the early and mid-20th century used cinematic language to shape public opinion, and Hollywood learned this too. Entire generations grew up subconsciously absorbing ideas about heroism, romance, masculinity, femininity, patriotism, and morality through cinematic storytelling. Film taught audiences who to admire, who to fear, and who to trust. And perhaps most importantly, film taught us that emotions can be engineered. We often assume that if something feels true, it probably is true. But filmmaking reveals something deeply unsettling. Emotions can be manufactured, designed, and constructed. And once you begin to recognize that, you start seeing the world very differently. What changed in the modern world is not the existence of emotional persuasion. What changed is scale. Because social media algorithms essentially became editors. Every time we open our phones, algorithms are making cinematic decisions for us. What to show us, what to hide, what information appears in what order, and what emotions are amplified. And just like in film, sequencing changes meaning. Algorithms prioritize content that keeps us emotionally engaged. Things that stoke our outrage, fear, validation, tribal identity. Not necessarily because someone behind the curtain is evil, but because emotionally charged content keeps people engaged with it. And the longer we stay engaged, the more profitable the system becomes. The result is something that I think is deeply dangerous. We no longer simply consume media. Media now studies us while we consume it. It learns what frightens us, what angers us, what validates us, and what confirms our world view. And slowly, our digital environments begin constructing personalized realities around us. Now, I don't just teach film. I also have the privilege of teaching a subject called theory of knowledge, also known as TOK. It's like philosophy, but a little bit lighter. And in TOK, as my TOK students well know, because I talk about it ad nauseum, this idea of emotionally constructive realities, we have a word for this concept, and this phenomenon we call echo chambers, personalized realities. Not built by coincidence, but built by emotional reinforcement. And now the dramatic rise of artificial intelligence is accelerating this process. The danger of AI is not simply fake images or misinformation. That is just a small part of it. The real danger is emotionally persuasive media arriving faster than our ability to critically examine it. We are becoming increasingly surrounded by content designed not necessarily to inform us, but to provoke us, to keep us reacting, not reflecting. And that has enormous consequences for how humanity understands the truth. Now, at the beginning of this year, I took my entire film curriculum for all 3 grades, grade 10, 11, 12, and tore it apart and started over to accommodate some of these drastic societal changes that are affecting our lives every day. And for the incoming new film students in grade 10, I gave them a very simple exercise to start out the academic year. The simple task I gave them was to film 2 scenes. But those scenes needed to use the exact same locations, the exact same actors, and the exact same dialogue. The caveat being, one scene needed to feel like a horror film, and the other needed to feel like a comedy. Now, my new students, who had never experienced film before, for most of them never made a film in their life, they thought at the gate that that task was too difficult, that it was impossible. How could the same reality deliver 2 entirely different emotional responses? But then they started changing things. The horror film used dark lighting, slow camera movement, silence, shadows, long takes, and also tight close-ups. Whereas the comedic version used very bright lighting, faster pacing, more exciting music, and exaggerated performances. After we showed those films in class, the students had 2 very different responses to them, as one would expect. The first film, the comedy film, made them laugh. The horror film made them feel genuine tension, even though the core reality of the scene didn't change. They still had a different response. That moment stayed with me, despite its rather simple and mundane nature. To me, it demonstrated something profound. Human beings rarely respond to reality itself. We respond to framing. And once you realize how dramatically framing changes meaning, you begin to understand why 2 people can look at the same event online and come away with 2 very different perspectives. Now, as a theory of knowledge teacher, one of the questions I constantly ask my students is, how do we know what we know? It is the fundamental core question upon which all of TOK is built. And increasingly, I think we might need to adjust this question, to change this question for the modern era. Because I think the more urgent modern question we should be asking our students is, why do we believe what we believe? And to be clear, I'm not arguing we should become paranoid. I'm not saying we should distrust every image, every film, every piece of media, or every technological advancement. That isn't the point. The point is awareness, critical consciousness. In a world increasingly shaped by emotionally persuasive systems, certainty can become dangerous, especially when it discourages reflection. And I want people to start asking critical questions again. Questions like, who constructed this perspective? Why does it affect me emotionally? And perhaps most importantly, what might I be missing? Every image is an argument. Every edit is a decision. Every narrative frames reality in a particular way. And in a world increasingly shaped by algorithms, AI, and emotionally persuasive media, the ability to critically reflect may become one of the most important survival skills of the modern age. And maybe wisdom begins the moment we stop asking only what am I looking at? And start asking, what am I being led to believe? Thank you.